Hi, Michaela.
Hi, Steve.
Well, today we're going to AMA, Ask Michaela Anything, and I have a viewer question for you that goes like this. I've been together with my partner for a year and a half, and I worry it may be getting boring. Is it normal that I don't feel fireworks all the time?
Yes. That's the answer. Yes, it is normal. Um, and we could leave it there, but of course, it's probably good to say a few things about that. So, in a relationship, there's phases, right? And those phases in the relationship, there's typically, there's a few kind of versions of a trajectory. And of course, the first thing that happens is it's really, really exciting. You meet somebody, it's new, it's fresh, it carries all the promise and the hope of it being something good and exciting. And in that phase, of course, there is a lot of different things happening that all make it super exciting. The first thing, of course, is hormones of all kinds, hormones and neurotransmitters and bonding, hormones, all the kind of things that essentially produce incredible feelings and states in the body. And then in addition to that, of course, there is the chemistry, the attraction, which comes from the fact that you don't know that person. And we talk about that a lot, of course, in our work, we call it erotic friction as a means of talking about the hotness, essentially, the excitement of being with somebody who's different than you. And that being different than you has a few really interesting and amazing, effects. One of which is you have strong chemistry, but also it feels just really exciting and new, and it opens all different kinds of areas that are typically not open. And all of that together makes for these butterflies or fireworks, whatever people call it, the spark. And those butterflies and fireworks of the first phase of relationship is important because that's what that's what gets you in, so to speak. And there's a very special magic in those first encounters of the erotic but also relational kind. And that's very normal, and it's nice to have. Not everyone has it. Some people get into relationships differently. They were friends for a long time, but there's always that kind of excitement, that really kind of exciting cocktail of butterflies and the heart's beating and every kiss is special, and all of those kind of things. So that's a good first place, but that is typically not based on actual relational considerations. It's based on attraction, it's based on erotic friction, it's based on oxytocin. So it's very exciting and brand new. Then as the relationship develops, typically a few things happen. If the relationship develops into a more, let's say, two people building a life together kind of relationship, whatever that means, that's different for different people. For some people, that means living together, moving in together, or having children together, or building a business, or some kind of joint venture that makes for a deepening of the commitment as well as a deepening of the relationship. And in that phase, and our questioner is talking about it's been a year and a half, so that's kind of a classic moment. In that time, the, let's say, feel-good hormones and the first wave of sexual excitement and all of those things have kind of plateaued or waned. But what happens parallel, ideally, and when things go well, is that there's a deepening of the intimacy, there's a deepening of the communication, and there's a future being built. Now, there's other scenarios which we can talk about as well, but in that scenario, it sometimes feels like it's getting a bit more boring, or the spark's gone. Or I had somebody text me the other day saying, this is the first time, this is the first night we've been together where we haven't had sex. Is it a problem, right? Is there an issue? That's often when that moment happens. people really freak out because they're used to that kind of engagement. And when other things happen, like now you're in a relationship and you come home and maybe you had a horrible day at work and you just want to hang out and have a meal and a cuddle, then that's considered very scary. And it is scary when your main value of the relationship is hot sex. But if the main value of your relationship or one of the main values, you don't have to not have hot sex, but when there's other things happening, like a deepening of intimacy or things like that, then yes, you will have less fireworks and hopefully more and deepened connection and intimacy and an ability to um, go somewhere with the relationship.
How do you know if this sense of a loss of the butterflies is, as you've put it, a kind of a natural maturing of the relationship into other kinds of relating that perhaps might still include satisfying sexual aspect? How do you know that it's that over things are going downhill? Is it possible that there can be a loss of attraction that signifies a greater problem in the relationship, that maybe it's coming running into problems of some time? And if it is that first one, a sort of new phase of a healthy relationship, how do you have any advice for how to successfully acclimatize to that new phase?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, a lot of people think it's going downhill when that first butterfly kind of a moment goes away, or on a regular basis isn't there anymore. In a certain way, it is going downhill, right? And what I mean by that is very, very often when that first butterfly uh, moment goes, and it part of it is, you know, the hormones even out, so to speak. The bonding hormones are not as strong. The spikes are not as strong. You may be living together. You know, so there's some aspects of that, but very, very often there is a kind of going downhill because people put attention on other things. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the relationship. And so we can make a differentiation between, are there any other warning signs, which we can talk about, or is it just that moment in time? So is it just that moment in time? We would look at, is the relationship otherwise progressing okay? Meaning, are there other things that are happening? Very often in the beginning of a relationship, people just see each other and they spend a lot of time with each other, and it's very exciting and interesting. And then comes that phase where you meet each other's friends and you go out more, or you go to each other's families or things like that. And it's basically good. There's not a lot of friction. There's new interesting things happening, but they're not of the sparks and butterfly variety. So if it's going into the direction that you want your relationship to go, we are assuming somebody wants the relationship to go into a deeper, fuller expression of two people throwing their resources together for something nice, you know, nice for them in relationship. So if that's happening, but the butterflies are going, then you're probably just in one of those phases where you have to acclimatize, as you said. But the reason I was saying it is probably going downhill is that very often when people used to come to my office, when I still had an office and I saw people every day, day after day, I'd see like 3, 4, 5 people in a week who would have that specific complaint. And I would always start asking questions around what they started doing different. And what they started doing different, and that is a going downhill, is they stopped making an effort, right? Now it's no longer dressing up and looking good and being sexy and putting some perfume on, or a new t-shirt, or showering when you come home, or whatever, right? It's like sweatpants every day, all day with each other. It's no longer that effort of really seeing the person in that first moment of getting together and really engaging, but it's, you know, the phones are being scrolled and the other things are happening. And so there is a degrading of what makes a relationship exciting and sparkling and erotically exciting, which has to do with creating that difference and making a bit of an effort to be with each other in a concentrated way, not in a, and also I'm on my phone and watching TV. Now there's a place for that, But when it comes to the erotic, there isn't a place for that. You have to spend time and effort and energy on making it exciting. That's why, people, when they have that moment where it starts getting a bit less exciting sexually, they often go to hotels or outside, or, things happen on vacation. That has to do with the change from the ordinary, the change from where things have started to kind of become comfortable, but not very exciting. So when all else goes well, the relationship is going in the direction that you want it to go. And also, very importantly, your communication and your attitude towards each other is good. Then you can work specifically on recreating some of that spark or the butterflies as you want to. And then the easiest way to say that is you do the things you used to do when you went on a date. And that typically is the stuff that makes for excitement. So that's a quick and dirty way of saying, here's how you reinvigorate it. There's, of course, details to that, how you can do that. There's a whole chapter in The Wild Woman's Way where I talk about all the do's and don'ts of keeping the spark alive. So, there's many, many which ways you can recreate it, but essentially the quick answer is don't let it go downhill in the way you relate to each other. Give each other attention, make the effort to really actually connect, right? So that's a fairly straightforward thing, and we can maybe talk about some more details, at another time. But the important piece is that if you believe that the sexual spark is essential for your relationship and the sexual spark goes, that's where the real danger for the relationship happens, not because the sexual spark is gone, because you can recreate that, but because discontent and resentments can happen. And once you have a certain amount of discontent and resentment and passive aggressive communication and feelings of lack of self-worth, then there's relational issues, and those issues are way harder to fix than simply lack of butterfly issues. So you definitely want to catch these things, and that might mean revisiting how you feel about yourself as a human in relationship, right? Is it just all about the sex appeal, or what are your highest value in relationships? So you can kind of make up for some of the loss of butterflies, so to speak, with some other things that you value about yourself in the relationship and that your partner values about you, so that you're not getting into that kind of feeling where you only feel loved and desired if there's fireworks every time. So that's just a caveat, that if you let it slide too long, there will be some other secondary issues. And very often in my practice till this day, what I see next is that stuff happens that's not really great for any relationship. Cheating being one of them, but cheating is not the only one. It's just like looking at other places for distractions, coping, like bad kind of coping, that is shopping or drinking or golf or whatever. And not that golf in itself is bad coping, but if you put all your attention somewhere to alleviate some kind of feeling of lack, that can go quite bad quite quickly. So that's the first thing. But the other thing you asked is, how do you know it's taken its course? Well, typically you know that it's taken its course when all other things are also not really that good. So let's just say you're getting with someone and you want a long-term relationship, something a little bit more committed. But you start out, it's all butterflies and late night, visits and cool erotic encounters, and it's amazing. But the relational aspect isn't really progressing that much or at all. And that, of course, also happens. And it doesn't matter which partner doesn't want to progress, it can go both ways, where one partner is just fine with with what keeps the kind of fireworks happening, which is you don't see each other very often. you don't have that much in common in certain ways. So meaning you don't do things together with your friends or your family. You might not even live together. Or there's talk about moving in together, but it's never really kind of progressing. So there's typically some other signs that the relationship isn't progressing in the way that at least one of the two partners would like it to be. And then very often in that phase, when one partner then tries to kind of up the intensity for the sake of getting the relationship to the next level, there's even more sparks and butterflies because there's a certain kind of a intensifying of the heat, but it never goes relational. And then eventually that will also, the spark will also wane for the biochemical reasons and also the reasons of it not really aligning. And once again, resentment, withheld information, that kind of stuff kicks in. And sometimes it's also just, it's done. Two people had a nice time. They don't have that much in common. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't even have to be super full of friction. Sometimes things just take their course, but then typically both people know it. In this scenario where one person wants more than the other, it typically goes to one person is trying to maintain the status quo, the other person is trying to drive the relationship forward, and then that at some point comes to some kind of a break or halt.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. And speaking of human stuff, next time our question is about attachment styles and commitment issues. Whenever I get into relationships, after a while, I just want out. Is it a damaged attachment style or is something else going on? So that's our theme for next time. So we look forward to that. Thank you very much, Michaela.
Yes, Steve.